Glad to have you back. Joining me on News 9 to discuss the growing trend of threatening electorate over elections is Frank Tietie, lawyer and Arise News analyst. Frank, glad to have you join me. Let me start off by asking you, what do you attribute to this trend of threats directed at the electorate? Who should really be those holding the power?
I think it's just an expression of the APC members now realizing the vulnerability of their party and their candidates in the coming elections. So now that they realize that it's possible to defeat the APC, to defeat certain candidates, they're now resorting to threats and intimidation. And so apart from the fundamental issue of impunity, because once there's a father who did that and he was immediately remanded and then tried and then maybe punished and given a soft punishment because there's an optional fine, the optional fine of 12 months or 12 month imprisonment or 5 million naira according to the Electoral Act, particularly in Section 97. If that was done in the wake of the Oshun elections, during the campaign for Oshun elections, Honorable Shekwolo won't dare to do this. So yes, it's impunity. But when you see politicians becoming very desperate and then resorting to threats, it is simply because they're not afraid that the electorates may likely, are growing to, like their political party, so they resort to threats and violence. But they are not doing their party any good. In fact, they are being disingenuous. They are being, I would say, that they're doing something harmful to their political party and their presidential candidate when they now resort to threats. And I will show you a good example. In every election, you always find people on the fence, in the middle ground, who are yet to make up their mind until election day. But when you make statements like this, when they said, look, I said federal might wasn't used in Osun State, but I commended the voters in Osun State. Reason is that despite 30 or 40 people reportedly killed before the elections, these voters still came to vote. So when you make certain statements like this, people will remind you that, look, you don't own Kuje. I mean, people from Niger Delta will tell you that you don't use our money to build your local government, and then you wake up to tell us to leave. And then again, it becomes a growing, serious national problem. I don't think anybody, particularly the DSS, should wait for any instruction.
Now, that's why I want to bring up this issue. There's this issue of lack of deterrence for such unguarded utterances. Why would someone occupying political office say, if you don't vote for a party, leave this local government, or ask to kill supporters of another party, or the statements of the cleric, which he doubled down on, saying he won't apologize. And the one I just read a while ago, referring to the president who said, all is fair in politics.
In other words, let me tell you something. In terms of the Jengir statement, Jengir was simply celebrating the Muslim ticket. But here is a man, Honorable Shekwolo, threatening the very foundation of Nigeria, the corporate existence of Nigeria. Other nationalities that make up this Federation of Nigeria are watching and say, could this be their ultimate plan? That after we've developed the FCT and all that, one day they'll wake up and say we should get out because we didn't vote according to their expectation?
Remember,
what Shekwolo was doing.
Remember, he has retracted.
It doesn't matter. That's the idea. You see, there will always be spin doctors who will write these things and say do damage control. But people have already been afraid. Do you know how viral that video has gone? And do you know, I read on an international platform saying, describing my country, that where a local politician is threatening. It's not the first time. And that's why this culture of impunity will stop. I was only going to address the DSS by saying that, look, DSS, you don't need to wait for any political instruction from the villa. This man is threatening the Nigerian state. The existence of the Nigerian state. Use him as an example. It would be very sad if by tomorrow Honorable Shekwolo is not remanded and then is taken to face the law. Because what it means is that this growing impunity, Father Hansi did it, Oh yeah, the police did the right thing by inviting him, but it was insufficient. And in fact, it gave the impression that, look, this, you see, you know, being a loyalist to President Tinubu,
you can do anything and get a
license to do anything. No. You know, and to the extent now that a local government chairman. But in this case, it's an important one. This is an area council in the Federal Capital Territory, you know, brazenly on video threatening people. Man, come on. I can't imagine it. So someone from Niger Delta, and I keep telling these people, they're very decent people from the FCT. Whether you talk about Gabriel Aduda, you know, a fantastic, you know, civil servant, or our own Somna Sambo. But when FCT residents begin to nurse this idea that we own this place, therefore we rule it, and then all of you are foreigners, they must be warned. Because there are implications. And what this man has done now is to reinforce a big fear. I think we need a whole lot of work to do.
That's why I would ask you this question. What do you think will be the probable fallout of these kinds of statements on the electorate themselves?
No, they will revolt against the APC. And I hate to say it, because they will revolt against the APC. They will try to, you know, Nigerians, one thing I see, you see, sometimes unfortunately, they are very reactive. If, you know, I would have expected the elections to be based on, you know, on issues, you know. But see, you see, Oshun has told us that Nigerian electorates can be reactionary, even though, and in that way, their responses may not be well guided, but I mean, can be very well predicted. So somehow they will inform Honorable
Shakolo, the place of emotions,
that you don't own this place. It's a federation that you have to, with this federation had to go to war. And you know, and millions died in order to put this federation together.
Oh, and then, I thought you were encouraging war.
No, I wasn't.
To go to war.
I mean, and then one guy is coming to threaten. For goodness, I remember when this sort of rhetoric came up, and you know how spirited, I think it was under the presidency of Goodluck Jonathan, how spirited government made efforts to assure people. I mean, the threats were made against ethnic nationalities. We've seen that somehow even happening in Lagos. That, oh, if you vote this and then some persons will drown in the lagoon. We've constantly accommodated this nonsense, and that's the reason why. You know, I feel enraged because I know how much investment people make in this country, particularly in the FCT, and one, you know, local chairman, you know, who has enjoyed money for the federation, and is not threatening the existence of the federation. That man should be prosecuted immediately, or else no other person should be prosecuted for any political any statement encouraging political violence. DSS should not arrest anybody again. Well, the police should not do anything if they don't arrest this situation, because this is the worst we have ever had, worse than that of Jingay, because Jingay was simply being ecstatic at the fact that Muslims are not the ones going to be president and vice president. That didn't mean anything compared to a man who is telling that, look, because you don't vote APC, get out of my... Who are you to even make that statement? And then you want to do damage control, get punished first, so that another person will not make that kind of useless and irresponsible statement.
Thank you so much. You had already talked about it. I was saying that our court party is calling on the IGP and the
No, this is a man of the DSS. This is the state that has been threatened. Nigerian state is being threatened by a political actor under the influence of excessive loyalty to the president, whereas he doesn't know that he's doing serious damage to the political fortunes of the
lawyer and Arise News analyst. You're really boiling. Thank you so much for being on Newsnight.